Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the HearSay podcast. I am your host, Max Ivey. I am a 59-year-old Caucasian male with medium-length brown curly hair, brown eyes. I'm wearing a white button-down dress shirt with a black tie and sitting in a kitchen chair. I have retinitis pigmentosa and have no functional vision, although I would be classified as having light perception. And today I'm very happy that we can have Walt Marchbanks with us on the show. Walt is the Customer Programs and Services Manager for the Port of Portland, and he has been working hard there to improve the accessibility and the user experience of everyone at the Portland Airport. He has also been involved in starting the PDX Canine Therapy Program and the PDX Volunteer Music Program. Walt, welcome to the podcast. I'm really happy to have you on the show.
Well, thanks, Max. It's a pleasure to be here. Walt Marchbanks. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a 40-year-old Caucasian male wearing a gray fleece vest and a blue dress shirt underneath it. Like Max had mentioned, been involved in this work for quite a while now, and it's just a pleasure to be here. So thanks for having me on.
And that leads right into my first question. You know, you have been involved in the travel and tourism industry for most of your career and also in the efforts of making it more inclusive. How did you get into that work?
You know, that's a great question. You know, I started with the Port of Portland as a property manager about 13 and a half years ago. And when I started here, I got really involved in environmental work. We started a food donation program. And for me, kind of helping to support historically marginalized communities has always been a really passionate focus of what I've done. I came over to our customer relations team about 4 years after I started here. And managed a number of different initiatives and programs that sort of centered around the guest and employee experience. And, you know, my work really focusing on accessibility, or our work sort of collaboratively as an airport centering around accessibility goes back to 2018. But even prior to that, I was involved with doing flight dress rehearsal programs with the Autism Society of Oregon, and a number of other sort of strategic initiatives relative to accessibility before really the focused work on accessibility. So that's really how it started, but it's really taken off from there. So.
Right. And I understand y'all are actually in the middle of or just concluding a major renovation or reconstruction, and a lot of that took accessibility into account. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. We just finished up phase one of a big multi-phase construction project to sort of redesign and reshape the central terminal core of the airport. So we've still got about 15 months left until the project is completed. But yeah, there's definitely been a lot of successes along the way from an accessibility perspective, and we certainly have a long way to go. I would say that a lot of the work that we've done around accessibility, making our airport just better in general, really centers around our accessibility advisory committee. And our accessibility advisory committee is really the backbone of all of our accessibility work. They help us guide our work. They help us kind of along every step of the way, really. And they've been a really big help for us to kind of help guide and shape where we make investments in technology and infrastructure. And that work, like I said, really precedes all this work around construction too. So.
Okay, so what would you say are the biggest challenges or the biggest negatives about accessibility in the travel industry right now?
Oh, well, that's a big question. I think, you know, for us, walking distances are a big challenge for us here at the airport. And I think walking distances are a challenge for any big airport or big facility. You know, there's a lot of space between gates. There's a lot of space between the check-in counter and where you're going to get on your flight. So I think that those are some of the biggest challenges that are isolated to us. But I'd say from a travel industry perspective, I think that, you know, people now are coming back into travel. I think the pandemic slowed travel down considerably. But now there are people who want to get out. They want to experience travel again. And I think, you know, it can be it's a very unnerving thing for people to travel. It can be a daunting task, right? There's a lot of things that people have to take in mind and take into consideration. So for us, it's really all about, minimizing or breaking down those barriers to entry and really kind of helping people feel as comfortable as they can, and kind of reinstill their sort of comfort in traveling again. They haven't traveled for a while as well.
And I imagine that's especially challenging because people always think things were better the last time they did them. And in this case, the last time may have been 5 or 6 years ago.
Right. Well, and our airport has gone through a massive transformation. If people haven't traveled in 5 years, the airport looks distinctively different than it did the last time they traveled through. And it's just a different experience ultimately. And we've tried to work with our partners to really enhance the experience, albeit different. It's also different in some really great ways, right? We've made some significant improvements, both to technology and infrastructure over the last 5 or 6 years. And I'm sure we'll talk about that quite a bit today. So.
Okay, and so we talked about the physical accessibility and the challenges. What are the challenges, as you're aware of them, for digital accessibility in travel?
Well, I think when you first look at digital access, you think about language access, right? So our public website, we recently made some changes to our public website, so it's available in Spanish as well, which is the second most popular language, or the second most used language here at PDX. So our website is now available in both English and in Spanish. So that's helpful. But from other digital tools, our airport provides a number of digital tools to help people through their journey. Um, Several years ago, we partnered with a company called Good Maps, and Good Maps is a wayfinding solution that allows people to use augmented reality to go point to point within the building. So if they want to find their way to their gate, or they want to find their way to a restroom, or find their way to a shop or a restaurant, using the Good Maps app, we have the entire facility mapped here, so folks can enter in their destination and actually just kind of get step-by-step instructions to get to their space. It also works with smart glasses. It works with other tools. So it really provides a lot of useful tools to get people from point A to point B. So those are just a couple. We also have a partnership with Ira. So Ira service here at PDX is a great tool that helps people who are blind connect with a sighted interpreter and navigate their way through the facility. Coming in July, we're actually going to be adding the Ira ASL tool as well. So both airport employees and the traveling public can utilize that to help with communication for folks who are deaf or have ASL needs. So that's going to be great. And then I think, when we think about other things that are digital in the space, we have really great resources on our accessibility portion of our website, things like visual paging, other tools that exist there where you can text somebody if you need to get some assistance or whatever that might look like. So using the web is really the starting point for people's journey. We always tell people that, your journey starts at home, right? You start when you're planning for your trip, when you're looking at airfare, right? So where you have choices as you're traveling. So we want you to choose PDX, and giving people the best sort of user experience on the digital side is a really important way to improve people's experience before they even begin their journey through the airport itself.
Right. So as I was listening to you, I was thinking about two different aspects there. First, the physical space. And the physical space of an airport has never really bothered me because I tend to be one of those people who's willing to ask for or accept help to navigate. Or I'm also one of those people that I'm visually impaired, but I'm still going to take the wheelchair if there's one available because of the distances. And so knowing that y'all have these technology options in place and that hopefully other airports will be following your lead in that area makes me feel more confident about future air travel. And then the digital side of it, as far as accessibility goes, I really do hope that we're going to see some real improvements in the design of websites beyond y'all's, because quite frankly, for me, most booking sites are so challenging that I either have somebody else do it. I attend events where the organizers manage the transportation for their attendees or their speakers, or I may talk myself out of going somewhere I want to go because of the challenges of navigating, booking a flight, and then the things that follow on after you actually book the flight. Mm-hmm. So sounds like y'all got some good stuff going on there, and some good examples for other people in the travel industry, not just airports, and ports to use as examples to make the overall travel experience better for everyone, but especially for people with disabilities.
Yeah, that's great, Max. I want to also add that, from a digital and website accessibility perspective, I think that getting direct feedback from users is a really important thing. We've leaned on our accessibility advisory committee on numerous occasions to improve our website, specifically for people who are blind or have low vision. So that's certainly an area that we're going to continue to work on and continue to try to improve. There's a lot of additional assistive widgets and things like that that could really help to improve website accessibility, and those are things that we're all certainly looking at diligently right now.
So, well, what are some improvements that you can think of beyond what we've already talked about that could be made in the tourism industry to make it more accessible?
Well, right now we have 4 different wheelchair providers at PDX, and I think anybody who travels through an airport, it's important to note that wheelchairs are provided by the airlines themselves and not provided by the airports. That is a U.S. Policy. So in other places in Europe, they're delivered by the airport itself. So, for us, what we're finding is that really working with our airline partners to improve wheelchair accessibility is an important thing to look to. For example, we're deploying a Bluetooth beacon network at PDX that we're providing access to all of our wheelchair providers to improve their level of service. Because again, they're kind of operating in disparate groups. And when you think about tourism more broadly, I think really creating better tools to have more of an end-to-end journey, I think is a really important thing. So for example, if you're, going from home to a resort, you're going to want to know what your connections look like, how those transfers are going to take place, with whom. So for us, it's really looking at our tourism partners and really working collaboratively with the tourism industry. We have a really great working relationship with Travel Oregon, with Travel Portland, certainly with Sports Oregon and others. So we're always trying to work on ways that we can improve those connections and find better synergy between all those disparate groups, because it creates a more end-to-end user experience ultimately.
That's an interesting point. Generally, when I have this conversation, we're focused on the outward effects of accessibility. We're between the business or the organization or the entity and the customer with a disability. But you just made a great point about how creating better relationships between the providers to an airport or a hotel or a restaurant can also go a long way to improving accessibility.
Yeah, I mean, Eric Lipp with Open Doors said it best when he said, "Nothing for us without us." So for us, we always think about the user, put the user at the front of the discussion, and design around that, right? We want universal accessibility, but we also want to use targeted universal accessibility. So we lean on our accessibility advisory committee to really help us sort of educate those discussions. But when it comes to relationships, I mean, those are the key. Those are the front of everything, right? It's how do you establish those connections? How do you establish those relationships and nurture those and really work to create the best experience possible?
All right. And from that, how do you see investments in accessibility benefiting the organization?
Well, I think that number one, investments in accessibility are just good business. I mean, if you have a public facility like we operate an airport, right? The airport has a responsibility to create a space that's inclusive to all of its guests, right? So we really kind of put that at the front of what we do. We incorporate that into our strategic plan. We incorporate that into our strategic guidance documents, and that's sort of our North Star. We're always trying to make ways to create an airport that's accessible by the community that we ultimately represent, right? Our airport is a microcosm of the greater Portland metro area, the community, and all of our constituents. And we want people to feel inclusive and feel like they belong, feel like they have a space that they feel seen. And that's really an important aspect of what makes this airport such a unique place.
All right. Before I get to my last question, there is one question that has occurred to me because you've mentioned it quite often. And I'd like to get some thoughts from you, if possible,
Sure.
on how an organization would create one of these accessibility guidance type teams if they don't already have one, or how they would strengthen the teams that they already have.
Yeah, I mean, we've had our accessibility advisory committee. It started back in 2018, and it's been a working process, right? So we started off looking at individuals. We looked at organizations, not necessarily individuals, but organizations that support the needs of people who are blind and have low vision, deaf and hard of hearing users, older adults, mobility being a main one, gender equity being an important one, language access. And within all of those groups, and then invisible disabilities. So could be people with sensory needs, could be people with autism or Asperger's, any number of things that are invisible. So, we kind of started off by developing some sort of high level categorical groups, and then we started reaching out to organizations. The effort was originally led by our community affairs team, and we have a group of internal stakeholders that drive that work. I think that that's an important piece. That I'm wearing a jersey here. There are many other people within the organization that support this work and drive this work. And I'm not alone in this. We have friends with our planning and development team, people who are involved in our innovation team that are involved in this, our airport operations group, folks from our site and facility designs, the airport architects. We have a strong group of core internal stakeholders. And those folks are all very curious and they're listening, and we take feedback very seriously. And, our accessibility committee members are super engaged and they really care about, making this airport such a great place. So I think if you don't have an advisory committee, then, developing one is a matter of just getting a list of organizations that you'd want to help educate your work and develop a construct. And I was really fortunate. We were fortunate to have a person named Chris White, who was on our community affairs team, that really sort of initiated this work. And when Chris left the organization, it was sort of instilled with me like, hey, Walt, we'd like you to sort of champion this and keep this going as strong as it can be. And I've taken that really seriously. So it's been a great process to be involved with. But yeah, it really is a community first effort for us.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I'm sure that will be very valuable to people out there listening. So, for my final question, what would you consider are some of the best practices in creating digital accessibility in the tourism industry?
So first, I think, consulting with experts would be right there at the top. When you're developing best practices, you really want to make sure that the experts are really helping you, drive all of that. Think about what's coming from a technology perspective. So, there's what you're doing now, and then there's what's going to come downstream. We know that there's a lot of great and innovative technology enhancements that are coming down the road. So always kind of being ready for that and being sort of ready to adapt as things go forward. So I think that those are probably a couple of the ones that kind of jump off the page. Lastly, I'd say universal accessibility. So we think about universal design, trying to find ways to improve the airport or improve the building and infrastructure and digital environment for all airport users. If you make an improvement that's going to help older adults or going to help somebody who's blind or has low vision, the likelihood is you're going to help a lot of other people along the way as well. So I think just trying to look at the universal design from both a physical perspective as well as a digital environment will only help to enhance the airport experience for all users. So,
well, thanks, Walt. I really appreciate you coming on our show today.
Yeah, it's been an honor, Max, and I certainly look forward to seeing what your users think of this too, and open the door for future dialogue as well.
I think they're going to get a lot of value out of this, especially people in businesses, nonprofits, and government agencies. So I really do appreciate all that you've shared with us today. And for our listeners out there, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. HearSay Shorts is produced by Sojin Rank, Mike Barton, Mariella Paulino, Missy Jensen, and Max Ivey, and is edited by Alex Dorrier. If you enjoyed the podcast and don't want to miss any future episodes, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.